So hello and welcome, to this little response video. Now, in a group the other day, I was asked a question, I posted an answer, and then my answer was challenged. And it was on fighters who were not keen to face Harry Greb, when offers had been made and when fights had been pursued. And every fighter I listed had an excuse, whether it be this guy, no, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through all the details because I found many excuses too weak. But one that I got engaging on was Harry Greb and Carpentier, and specifically, in 1922. Now, one answer I got was that Carpentier was beholden to have two other fights. He was signed to two other fights. That is not true. Secondly, there was the fact that, well, in fact, we'll go through it. Now, I said I've researched this before. I researched this years ago, and 1922 was not the only time, that Harry Greb wanted to pursue a fight with Georges Carpentier. Even Carpentier himself in 1923 suddenly, seemingly, might suddenly be interested in a Harry Greb fight again, despite turning down, and his team turning down, or both, he or his team or both, turning down the opportunity, the wide open opportunity in 1922. Now, the thing with Tex Rickard, and Greb's manager, George Engels, is Tex Rickard had a plan, when he matched Greb to Tommy Gibbons in 1922, Rickard's plan was to match the winner of Greb Gibbons against Gene Tunney for American light heavyweight title. So Harry Greb won that and challenged Tunney, and Rickard's idea then was whoever won that would then challenge for world light heavyweight title against Georges Carpentier. So he had a little round robin going. Gibbons would fight Greb, the winner would fight Tunney, and the winner of that fight would fight Georges Carpentier, and those were fights he was going to pursue. This is just well known by people who've studied 1922 and what Rickard and Engels and Greb and everybody was up to. Now, one point came back to me that Georges Carpentier was signed for two other fights. Now, I quizzed that and asked the gentleman, who I do respect, he has a good boxing mind on him, but I disagree with him wholeheartedly on this, and I will go through some information for you. I asked him, well, who are the two opponents he was signed to fight then? If he had these other two opponents who were there, and he said, Battling Siki would have been one, and there would have been one after that. Actually, he was not pre-signed to fight Battling Siki, and in fact Carpentier, when Greb bet Tunney in May 1922, Carpentier did not fight Battling Siki until September. So we've got May into June, July, August. He didn't fight Battling Siki until 4 months later, and there was no pre-signed agreement that he would fight Battling Siki. The two opponents that were mentioned that Carpentier was going to fight was Marcel Neal and Joe Beckett. But we'll go through that. Now Tex Rickard, wanted the winner of Greb Tunney to fight Carpentier for the world light heavyweight title. Now, immediately after Harry Greb had won the American light heavyweight title against Gene Tunney, Tex Rickard indeed sent an offer of $150,000 to the Carpentier camp to face Harry Greb for world light heavyweight title. Harry Greb stated he would fight Carpentier wherever Carpentier liked. Basically saying, yeah, bring him on, I'll fight him anywhere. But Carpentier or his team or both started playing games. First of all, and this is information you can find, first of all, Carpentier's team came back, and said, oh, well, we'd like French promoters to be able to bid on the fight, to stage the fight. Now, the problem with that is that no French promoter could put up the money that Tex Rickard could put up. No French promoter would put up $150,000 for that fight. That's just a simple fact. Carpentier had won his title in America. He'd fought Jack Dempsey in America in first $1 million gate. America was the logical place for Harry Greb, a well-known star and well-known veteran, and feared fighter in America, to fight Carpentier for that world light heavyweight title. Okay, but then they made out, we have these two fights. Carpentier is going to fight these other two fighters. Now, he did fight those two fighters, but he didn't fight them until later in 1923. The next fight he took was a fight against battling Siki, not Marcel Neal and not Beckett, okay? So, basically, okay, let me go through this information. Right now, Engel, Greb's manager, responded to the claim that a French promoter should book it. Engel said, that basically he and Greb and team will go wherever the money is. Okay, but Carpentier's team had already turned down other offers for fights. To box. Greb's team had turned down two offers to fight in London for like $10,000 to $15,000, which is nothing compared to money that was going to be put up by Ricard to put on Harry Greb and Georges Carpentier. Because actually, Ricard was going to host the fight at Boyles Acres. Okay, it was going to be a big stadium fight. They were going to throw all advertising behind it and set up a big fight in one of Ricard's big stadiums at Boyles Acres. That's where the Tex Ricard was going to host the fight. Now, but basically, so Engel responded, to all this by saying that Ian Greb would go where money was, but since the money was obviously in America, after Greb and his team had turned down two $10,000 offers to box in London, kind of showing the amount of money that was available in Europe for high-profile American fighters to come across to the EU, they would stay put, they would see if a bigger offer than 150,000 came back, but this is what George Engel, Greb's manager, had to say. I don't think the Frenchman come here to have anything to do with Harry, for he has been warned about Greb's stuff. He'd rather stay over there and pick up some soft dough. I know plenty about Carpentier's style of milling, for I had Frank Klaus when he whipped him some years ago, and my orders to Harry, if they were carried out, will find George stretched out on the floor taking the 10 count. Now the press by this time, because of Ricard's involvement, were now clamouring to see the Harry Greb battling Levinsky Georges Carpentier fight. So Tex Ricard sent a second communique to Carpentier's team 4 days after the first one on June 10th. Now Ricard finally got message back from Carpentier's manager stating that Carpentier would instead face Marcel Neal and Joe Beckett before any possible match with Greb. So Tex Ricard stated beforehand, Greb will fight Gibbons, the winner will fight Tunney, the winner I want to stage in a big fight at Boyles Acres against Georges Carpentier for light heavyweight title. After Greb won through that little mini tournament, ending up beating Tunney with that savage beating, he then wired the $150,000 offer. There was no comeback on it initially. Then Carpentier's team came back saying, we want a French promoter to bid on it, and we the blah blah blah. It's a duck. They were not going to get that money in France. They were not going to get $150,000 offer to house that fight in a big stadium. Greb had two offers for between 10 and 15,000 to box in London. That is the kind of money that was being offered, from Europe for Harry Greb to go over to Europe and fight. So why is he going to wait for an offer to come when it is not going to be anywhere near as big as Tex Ricard's? So Carpentier and his team immediately started throwing barriers. No, we have to wait for a French promoter, and now after the second communique, actually we're going to fight these two guys. Then he doesn't fight either one of them. Instead, 4 months later, fights battling Siki, gets his butt side whipped by Siki pretty badly. And then doesn't fight Marcel Neal or Beckett until mid 1923. So those fights were not signed. So the first point I was quizzed on, Siki first fight signed, he was signed into, and there'd have been one more after that if he'd have won, is not true. Battling Siki did not have a pre-signed fight deal with Georges Carpentier at the time that offer from Tex Ricard for $150,000 was sent through to Carpentier's team in Europe. And then the two names mentioned, Carpentier didn't fight him until 1923 anyway. So basically, Engel, pretty much when he said that totally seems consistent that Carpentier and his team or both don't want out to do with Harry Greb, because despite people saying, oh well, Greb was well known, okay, and Greb's exploits were heard of in Europe through the media, okay, he was known as a feared American fighter and American middleweight and light heavyweight. He was known, blah 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 blah. So Engels then criticised Carpentier's team, saying, well, why would he fight Marcel Neal and Beckett when he's got this huge fight for light heavyweight title against Harry Greb, a massive mammoth fight in a big stadium? Why would he fight these two guys for paltry money instead of the offer that's been made to him? Well, two offers. Rickard sent the first offer, then sent an offer again 4 days later, after receiving no communique. So why would he take these two fights for low money and not fight Harry Greb for a massive payday? So Engel basically said, I believe there's no doubt Carpentier is afraid to risk his title against Greb. He was made a wonderful offer by Rickard, but his wily manager cabled. He could not afford to accept it because Georges has 2 fights scheduled with as many bums in Europe. Fine state of affairs. Imagine a man with some brains turning down $150,000, enough money to save the whole of Russia. Apparently Carpentier has been given the well lowdown on Greb's prowess, for I can't see how he could possibly pass up that amount of money, except for the fact that he knows he's in for a licking if he consents to swap punches with my boy. That was George Engels' reaction to the entire negotiations with the Carpentier camp. Now, some people could say, oh, well, Carpentier didn't avoid a fight with Greb because he was going on holiday or he was going to fight someone. Okay, but frankly, that's ridiculous. You know, that'd be like me saying, well, Sugar Ray Robinson in no way avoided Charlie Burley because he fought a far weaker opponent. Because he wanted to fight a far weaker opponent than Charlie Burley. So, therefore, you can't criticise Robinson. I mean, that's ridiculous. That is no reason. You know, when Roy Jones captured his WBA heavyweight title off John Ruiz, people were actually saying, well, you haven't beat the real champion, you need to beat Lennox Lewis. Roy Jones went back down to light heavyweight. So, well, no, he didn't have to fight Lennox Lewis. He was going back down to light heavyweight. You know, you can go through any fighter's career and invent these excuses. You know, Henry Armstrong, when Burley were a top 3 contender for his title, and Burley was named along with Tippy Larkin, if I remember, and Fritzy Zivic. You know, when Henry Armstrong nearly got stripped at NBA welterweight title because he refused to face one of 3 contenders put forward, based on the fact he said, oh, well, actually, I've agreed to fight Jimmy Garrison again. And NBA were like, well, hang on a minute, we're naming these contenders for you to fight. You have to fight one of them. And Henry Armstrong were like, well, no, I want to fight Jimmy Garrison again, a guy he'd already mauled and beaten up. So is that not a duck because he's fighting a weaker opponent than Larkin, Burley or Zivic? That's not a duck then, because he's fighting Jimmy Garrison again. Yeah? We can't go on that way. At the end of the day, the offer was made, and 1922 is not the only time that Greb said he wanted to pursue a fight with Georges Carpentier. It happened a number of times, okay, during the early 20s. Greb wanted to fight every top-level fighter he could, just like he wanted to fight Dempsey, called him out multiple times, even stormed into Tex Rickard's office and demanded a fight with Dempsey. And Dempsey, at one point, was going to fight Greb, but he went to Europe on a trip and came back and said, oh no, he's too small. Even though Greb had been beating heavyweights, you know, Billy Mace, Bill Brennan, Gunboat Smith, on and on, okay? Suddenly, oh no, he was too small. Even though Harry said, you know, the way you beat Dempsey is to crowd him, maul him constantly, and move out. You sidestep him and maul him and keep punching, and after 6 or 7 rounds, he's mine. Because there'll be no more fight left in him. You know, I mean, Harry Greb was so confident of winning that fight, it was ridiculous. So, basically, that is what happened there. Okay, so then, you know, Engels, through preceding months, would then set off about pursuing a middleweight title fight with Johnny Wilson, of course, that happened in 1923. But interestingly, Carpentier did not fight, like I said, he got that massive offer. It was said they were going to fight Marcel Neal and Beckett next. Okay, those were fights that were not signed. Categorically, Carpentier was not signed into those fights. He could have accepted the Harry Greb fight, fought him in August or September 1922 for World Light Heavyweight title, Carpentier would have got a massive payday. Okay, he would have also got a massive whipping off Harry Greb. Okay, because Engels was connected to Frank Klaus, who'd whipped Georges Carpentier, and Engels knew Carpentier well, and he said when he goes in ring with my guy, he's getting wiped. Harry Greb is going to batter him. Okay, simple as that. He'd seen Carpentier up close. Some of his fighters had fought Carpentier. He knew Carpentier very well, and he knew Greb very well. And he said the reason he won't fight him is because he knows when he gets in that ring, he's going to get a hiding. He's going to get a whipping from my guy, Harry Greb. So that is a pure example of Rickard sending a monetary offer for a fight at Boyles Acres, okay, and the Carpentier camp started throwing roadblocks in the way, okay, making out, oh no, we're gonna, what did they say, where is it, oh yeah, Carpentier's manager finally, after much contact from Rickard one way, he responded saying, oh, we're not going to fight Greb, we're going to fight Marcel Neal and Joe Beckett instead. Then Carpentier didn't fight either of those, fought battling Siki, got his butt whipped, and then fought those two guys the following year. So that also destroys the talk that Carpentier was signed into 2 fights already against Marcel Neal and Joe Beckett. Okay, who are nowhere near on the level of Harry Greb. Fighting them from Greb is going down 3 or 4 rungs up ladder. They were both good, competent fighters, but Harry Greb, they were not. And it seems quite clear to me, and quite clear to anybody who listens to what I've just told you, where direct offers were made, then those offers were repeated, then roadblocks were put in the way, then they said, oh no, we're going to fight these 2 guys, didn't fight them, fought someone else instead and got whipped, then fought those 2 guys later. Now, it was also said about other fighters. Okay, the Dempsey one I've already dealt with. I will have no one tell me, and this gentleman clarified that and said, oh no, I wasn't saying that Dempsey didn't avoid Greb, because he did. Harry Greb called Dempsey out over a multi-year period. It wasn't only in 1922, it was multiple times Greb called him out. Okay, and Dempsey just would not fight him. And using the excuse of, oh, well, you know, there's no point having a fight because he's just a middleweight. Well, that middleweight is whipping every major great light heavyweight and many heavyweight contenders. Okay, and you didn't mind fighting a former flyweight who'd come up through weights in Georges Carpentier, did you? Who really is not any bigger than Harry Greb. So, you know, you don't mind fighting a smaller fighter in Frenchman Georges Carpentier, Dempsey, but you've got a big problem fighting a smaller fighter in Harry Greb. Okay, because I'll tell you something. Carpentier is only a few inches taller than Harry Greb. It's not like there's a massive size difference between the two. But there's 2. Okay, there's 2 or 5 names. I could go through others. I'm not going to. Okay, because at the end of the day, I've researched this stuff and I know it. And I know that Dempsey avoided Greb on multiple occasions. And I know from past research, okay, that I've revisited here through a different source, okay, the offers were made to Carpentier. End of discussion. If Carpentier camp would have come back and said, yep, we accept the fight, great, Greb would have been fighting for World Light Heavyweight title after destroying Tunney in 1922. But the Carpentier camp put roadblocks up, they weren't answering fight offers, so repeat offers were made. Then they finally came back and said, yeah, we're not going to have Greb fight, we're going to turn down your massive offer and fight for paltry money against these other 2 guys instead. Didn't fight either of those, fought Siki 4 months later, got butt whipped, okay, and then fought those 2 guys the following year. A duck. Plain and simple. The offer was there. Rickard had already put on massive events for Dempsey, okay, and he was going to put on this massive World Light Heavyweight title fight. Engels wanted it, Greb wanted it, Tex Rickard wanted it, and had cabled an offer, and it just wasn't accepted. A duck. Plain and simple. The money were there, the offer were there. Carpentier didn't take it. He lost out on that payday, got whipped badly by battling Siki, and lost his title. When instead he could have fought Harry Greb in a massive fight at Boyles Acres, okay, with a massive money fee up. So instead he lost to Siki for a fraction of money, okay, and then fought Neal and Beckett the following year, again for a fraction of the money. that he'd have got fighting Eddie Greb. That to me is a bona fide duck. I'm sorry. Okay, so there's 2 out of 5 I've highlighted, Dempsey and Carpentier. I'm not going to highlight what I know on others, okay, because at the end of the day, you know, it's easy for someone to put a list up and say, oh, well, I can come up with a little simple excuse for all them. Right, so, you know, Joe Calzaghe didn't avoid James Toney and Roy Jones because he didn't like aeroplanes. You know, this guy didn't fight this guy because he lost. Henry Armstrong didn't avoid Burley Larkin at that time because he'd give a verbal agreement to Jimmy Garrison. So he's not ducking those much better fighters. He didn't really duck Burley or Larkin because he lost later to Fritz Zivic. You know, it's not good. I can do that for every fighter. I can go, you give me a fighter who ducked 20 fighters, and I can go down and say those excuses. I can look at his record and say, oh, well, 7 months later he lost his title, so he didn't duck him 7 months earlier when the fight were offered. You can't do that. Offers were made. Direct cables were sent with a massive fight offer. Carpentier and his team did not want it. End of. Duck. He ducked Harry Greb. The chance to have a massive fight with a big payday. End of. I don't know what else I need to say on that. I'm out for now.